everyone. Welcome to Complexity, your new go-to podcast for all things multifamily. I'm your host, Jessica R., a seasoned property management with nearly 10 years experience in the Texas market. Today, we're going to touch on a topic near and dear to many hearts, first-time renting, specifically geared towards first-time renters. Whether you're a college grad, a young professional, or simply looking for a new place to call home, this episode is for you. A little bit about me. I would like to formally introduce myself and provide some insight into why I felt compelled to start this show. My name is Jessica, and I've been in this industry for nearly 10 years as a property manager, a leasing agent, and as an assistant manager. I started out humble, very humble, at a smaller property with only 150 apartments. I've worked my way up. After 7 years, I landed that white whale of property manager. Currently, I am employed at a brand new apartment complex as an assistant manager. When I was swapping war stories a few months ago with a coworker, she jokingly said that I should start a podcast about property management so I could tell some of my horror stories. I laughed it off and said sure while rolling my eyes. But something in her comment stuck in my brain, and I've been mulling this idea over for a few months. So I decided that January 2025 was the perfect time for me to start this show so I could share my experiences with y'all. I love what I do. I love helping people find their perfect home, and I truly love finding solutions to resident concerns. My industry goals will lead me towards becoming a regional manager one day, and as a regional, I would like to be a pillar of support for property managers, someone that they can rely on, that will listen to them and help them find creative solutions to their everyday problems. I have had some great experiences in this industry and forged some long-lasting friendships. I've also had some less than stellar experiences, and I've met people that I would no longer like to see ever again. I cannot wait to share with y'all about all the things I've seen and heard in my time in the property management industry. Enough about me. Let's dive in. Timing is everything. So you've decided to take the plunge and rent your first apartment. Congrats. But before you start packing your belongings, let's talk about timing. It's best to start your apartment hunt about 30 to 60 days before your desired move-in date. This gives you, the renter, ample time to tour properties, submit applications, and secure your new home. Most communities do not have availability more than 30 to 60 days in advance. If you are looking at a new construction community, they may allow holds on apartments up to 60 days from the date of application, while most established communities will only do 14-day holds from the apartment's ready date or from the application date if it is a vacant apartment. Make sure you ask what their policies are regarding hold times. For example, my community is new construction, and we are currently allowing people to apply for and hold an apartment up until March 15th. I would also ask the community if there are any penalties for canceling your application prior to moving in. Some communities may charge you a reletting fee, so make sure you know before submitting your application. When you are ready to tour a community, I strongly urge you to do some research online and narrow down your choices to a minimum of 3 communities. But typically, no more than 5, as you can confuse yourself and make your leasing decision harder. Scheduling an appointment with your desired apartment community is always highly recommended, as the on-site teams can have hectic schedules, and having set appointments allows them time to be properly staffed and prepared to give you an excellent leasing experience. Questions to ask on tour. While most communities will provide you with all of the basic information about their community prior to or promptly following your tour, I highly recommend asking additional questions while you are on tour. Here are a few examples that will help you make your leasing decision easier. What kind of specials does the property have, and what do you need to qualify for them? How do you apply? Is it online or on paper? What are the application fees? What is the company's early termination policy? In the unlikely scenario, you have a life-altering event and need to break your lease. Do they have a transfer policy? Meaning, are you tied to your lease for the whole term, or can you move later on? Is the maintenance team on call for emergencies? Do they have a courtesy officer? Are there any hidden fees or additional charges besides rent? What about paying rent online? Will there be a service charge? These are just a few examples of commonly asked questions I have heard. What you'll need to apply. To apply and qualify for an apartment, you must be at least 18 years of age, at least in the state of Texas, and be gainfully employed or have proof of income. You'll typically need 2 key documents: a valid government-issued ID, such as a driver's license or passport, and a Social Security card or ITIN number. If you are an international applicant, an ITIN will be necessary, and additional application forms may be required. You will also need to provide proof of income. Not all communities require the same documents. For instance, the property I currently work at uses a third-party system called Verifast that requires you to connect your bank account and upload pay stubs. All of this information is used for background checks and to establish your credit worthiness. Every community and management company requires different items to apply for an apartment. Be sure to ask before you commit. The screening and approval process. Once you've submitted your application, property management teams will evaluate your credit history, rental history, criminal background, and income. Typically, your income should be 3 times the monthly rent. However, if you're a first-time renter with limited rental or credit history, you might need a guarantor or co-applicant to strengthen your application. The income requirement for a guarantor can be around 5 to 6 times the monthly rent. This is to ensure that the guarantor can afford their own bills and yours. Most communities have 3 levels of approval status: approved, approved with conditions, or denied. While most communities will charge a security deposit, some may not. Deposit amounts can also depend on your approval status. Check with your preferred community prior to applying and get clarity on their qualifying criteria. Be prepared and be responsive. Now that you've applied, property management teams often have tight deadlines for application approvals. Be prepared to provide any additional documents or information they request promptly. Most communities will give applicants 48 to 72 hours to submit required paperwork. Once you have submitted all the necessary documents, it can take your apartment community up to 72 hours to process and approve your application. Be patient. If you have not heard from your community within 3 days of providing all of the requested documents, please reach out for a status update, but be mindful and courteous when asking for this information. What to expect once approved. Hey, your application was approved. 4 words every applicant loves to hear. Now that you are approved, your new apartment community will send over a welcome letter or email, which will outline all the next steps you as a renter need to take prior to moving in. This can include items such as setting up your electricity, obtaining renter's insurance, the amount of money owed to move in, and instructions for signing your lease agreement. Make sure you read over your welcome letter or email thoroughly, as these will typically contain the contact information you need to set up all items prior to your move-in. In Texas, we have a standard TAA lease agreement, and most communities will have their own addenda in addition to this standard lease. As a renter, it is your responsibility to make sure you have read and understand the terms outlined in your lease agreement. If you have questions about the lease or welcome letter, reach out to your apartment community. Move-in day. Congrats! You have made it to your move-in day. Prior to arriving at the apartment community to pick up your keys, first double check that you have sent over all the necessary items requested from your complex. This will ensure a smooth and seamless move-in process for both you and your community team. Some communities will require you to set a move-in appointment, so please be on time for this, while other communities may allow you to show up at any time on move-in day. Typically, there will be a few more documents to sign at move-in, and you will need to hand over your move-in funds, and most communities will issue you a welcome folder or gift along with your keys. This is another opportunity for you to ask any questions you may have thought of or forgotten to ask at an earlier time. You are now officially a renter. Welcome. The reality of apartment living. Now, let's talk about the realities of apartment living. The most common complaints that renters have are generally noise related. You will have shared walls with your neighbors, so sometimes you will be likely to hear some noise from them. Remember, if you can hear them, they can hear you. Most apartment communities have quiet hours, so if you do experience excessive noise during those quiet hours, be sure to let your office know or utilize the courtesy officer if your community has one. Be mindful of your own noise levels and adhere to your community's noise policies to help maintain a peaceful living environment. Work orders. This is a pretty standard practice, but most apartment communities will require the resident to enter a work order for any items requiring maintenance. If you have an issue, like your fridge stops cooling or stops making ice, utilize your company's resident portal to enter a work order. Maintenance will then come out during the next business day to address your concerns. Make sure you know what your community considers to be an emergency before submitting your work order. If your heater has gone out and it is below freezing outside, that is typically an emergency. But if you have 2 bathrooms and 1 toilet is clogged, that is typically not an emergency. Inconvenient, yes, but not an emergency. Pets in the picture. Another common complaint renters have is pet related. You may be able to guess what it is. Most, if not all, apartment communities have pet restrictions. Make sure you ask what these are if you have a pet. If you have a furry friend, please make sure to disclose of your pet at the time of application and pay any required fees or deposits. If your pet is a service animal or an emotional support animal, you'll need to provide the necessary documentation according to state and community guidelines. If you have a dog, whether it is an ESA or not, you are still required to follow local leash laws and follow community guidelines regarding pet waste. Please ensure that you pick up after your animal. It helps keep your community clean, sanitary, and pleasant for all residents. Some apartment communities, mine included, utilize a third-party company called Poo Prints. This is a DNA registry that helps apartment communities cut down on pet waste. Pay your rent on time. Paying your rent on time is crucial. Late fees can quickly add up, and consistent late payments can negatively impact your rental history, making it harder for you to secure housing in the future. Evictions in particular can have severe consequences. In some cases, having a broken lease is better than having an eviction. Check with your apartment community and ask them what their late payment policy is. If you know you may be late 1 month, please communicate with your property, as this will ensure a positive experience for both parties and can even prevent an eviction. Communication is always key. Renewals and move-outs. When your lease term is nearing its end, you'll typically receive a renewal offer 70 to 90 days in advance. If you plan to move out, be sure to provide your landlord with a 60-day written notice. Most communities have their own form they require. Remember, there will usually be a rental increase with each renewal. I recommend factoring that into your budget. Most renewal increases, in my experience, have been anywhere from $10 to $200 per month. Increases can depend on current market rents and where your current rent is on that scale. Most management companies also offer a month-to-month option in case the first 2 options do not work for you. It is imperative that you communicate with your property your intentions for renewing or vacating. This gives your community ample time to prepare your lease renewal or to start preparations to pre-lease your home. My advice. I would like to note that all of the advice and information I have provided you today is strictly for informational purposes and is based solely on my experiences in the Texas industry. My property management experience is limited to Class A and B properties, so please, please, please always refer to your community, local, and state laws and guidelines before making any decisions based on the advice I have provided. Renters. One last piece of wisdom I would like to share with you before we finish today. Leave a review for apartment complexes, whether you toured and chose another community, just leased, or have been living there for years. Yes, we love positive reviews. but we also use reviews to help us improve and grow as property management professionals. Reviews will also help other renters like yourself narrow down their choice of future home. Thanks for joining me today. It has been my pleasure to help guide you through this brief beginner's guide to the renting process. To all the property management professionals out there, please remember to be patient and courteous when working with first-time renters. Take the time to explain the process, answer questions thoroughly, and guide them through the complexities of apartment living. By doing so, you can help set them up for a positive rental experience and even get that positive review. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Complexity. Follow me on Instagram at complexity_podcast. That's complexity with 2 X's. If you have any questions or topics you'd like me to cover, please send me a DM. Until next time, stay complex.